Hello and welcome to Bonsai Pop, the only channel with a host who's 5'11" and has a 28-inch inseam.
Shake the baby leg. Ooh.
Yeah, I got short legs. Anyway, within the past couple weeks, Gigguk and our friend Jeff over at Mother's Basement have started a dialogue on classic anime. They both released videos, Gigguk's The Death of Classic Anime and Mother's Basement's Long Live Classic Anime. So naturally, for context of this video, you should check their videos that I got in my D down there. Because the reason I'm here right now is to continue said conversation. My name is Mike, and I'm gonna be your host if you haven't gathered that yet. Now, it's more important than ever to reiterate my ultimate philosophy on anime, and that is that anime is punk rock cartoons. And that philosophy easily bleeds into the conversation that's going on about classic anime. So, without further ado, anime has been a constant since I was very young. Quick background, I was born in '91 and I grew up in the countryside of Massachusetts in a one-horse town with nothing to do. I was a dork and then I was a punk, but honestly there's really no difference. I spent my time skateboarding, reading comics, playing video games, watching music videos, getting into trouble, running from cops, exploring the abandoned mental hospital / state school in my town, doing graffiti, you know, just being the edgiest little bastard you ever cringed at. At the same time, I learned guitar and started playing punk shows around my area. For me, anime was a go-to entertainment because it embodied a young anti-authoritarian spirit. In the late 90s, early 2000s, the majority of accessible anime revolved around fighting for what was right, despite anyone who got in the character's way. Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, Kenshin, etc. It was violent and graphic, which was stimulating, but also taught strong lessons about sticking to your ideals. It was encouragement I needed to continue to be me in a place I didn't belong. I felt very alone as a kid, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. I was angry at the world for being so stupid. I was angry at the kids in my school for being sheep, and I was scared that my country was gonna fall apart.
Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we.
And I was very, very bored. So I dove into the things that I loved wholeheartedly, like really dove in. It started with music. I didn't want to just listen to what was coming out at the time. I wanted to know where it came from. Same with video games and also anime. When I got something like a new album, I would look at the book, I would look at the back, I would see what bands influenced this band, and then I would check them out and repeat the pattern until I got back to the sources. But the beautiful thing about video games, anime, and punk rock is that these subjects are all tied together in a perfect knot. Now that I'm an adult, and I actually only realized this recently, I'm a huge history buff. And all of this together has made me an accidental otaku, a term I wasn't even aware of until like 2011. But my desire to learn about the past comes from looking at what we have now and needing answers to how we got it. Look at anime, look at how much we have and all the topics and genres and subcultures it covers. It's its own medium, a glorious smorgasbord of content for literally anyone, but how did we get here? How did I go from having to hide my love of anime in order to get a date to seeing anime become one of the world's biggest entertainment mediums? Aren't you curious about that, or do you simply accept it as it is? If your answer is the latter, it's time to wake up. Never settle for acceptance. Quote me, quote the punks, or quote the Buddha, always question everything. There's been debate about what constitutes as a classic anime, and I have a simple answer. It's anything that stands the test of time or will stand the test of time, visually, narratively, or culturally. And I have to say that that will never cease to happen. They may not be as universal as the classics of yesteryear, but we'll get into that. Now, classical anime is different and it's simple. It's anything that came before your time. There is a difference between an anime classic and classical anime, but they can also be one and the same. So first, let's look at Attack on Titan. There's no doubt in my mind that this anime is a modern classic. It will stand the test of time. But then we have something like X, which is classical and also a classic. And then there's Zoids, which is simply classical. It's aged and nowhere near the standard set by something like Attack on Titan or better shows of its own time. To bring it back to music, something like the Descendants' 1982 album Milo Goes to College is a classic that stands the test of time, just like Akira is for anime. They are also classical. However, I'd argue that while inferior to the aforementioned, NoFX's 1988 album, Liberal Animation, and the Fist of the North Star anime are still classical while not being the apex of their respective mediums. Classical punk music and classical anime is a great example of this. A lot of it is bad, like terribly bad, but it's important and beautiful regardless. See, art doesn't come from thin air, it comes from people. And like people, society, and culture, art grows and evolves over time. It creates its own history within its niche, and doing some personal anthropology is worth your time and can be extremely enlightening. For me, it made me realize that I wasn't alone, because for me, classical anime is mostly from the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. My favorite of it generally being from the 80s. To give a little background, the 80s were a time of conservatism in America and in Japan. We were both going through an economic boom, and with that generally comes conservative ideals. The idea being that things are going well, so don't rock the boat, keep the status quo and prolong the economy. The point is to protect the prosperity, but it doesn't leave the youth a lot of wiggle room to run free. By this time, punk, which is a British creation, had made its way to America, particularly Southern California, a well-known conservative area with a lot of money. Also an area with millions of kids who despise their tight-knit parents, and still do, by the way.
Manicured lawns and these perfect houses and people in their corporate jobs, and the children of these people were just looking for some life.
But what a lot of people don't know is that the same thing at the same time was happening in Japan. See, punk at its core is simply a reaction to rock and roll, the product of disenfranchised kids seeing Led Zeppelin or other bands like it and saying, fuck that, let's make some real music with feeling. That feeling is universal, and being disenfranchised is a driving force for creativity. I mean, have you ever wondered why your comedians and your artists are all depressed? So, hence the Japanese and American punk scenes, but also anime and manga. 80s manga and anime are plagued with hyperviolence, gore, and existential fear and huge questions about human existence and morality, very far from conservative ideals. That's because it takes a certain type of person to create, to put themselves into something so deeply that it blooms into reality. You need to have a story to tell in order to start telling it, and my classical anime comes from this, a time of wealth and prosperity, but also a time of censorship and conservatism. A time where expressing your feelings and having artistic aspirations was kind of taboo. A time where youth reacted as youth does in aversion to authority. This was also a time where being a nerd was frowned upon because you were watching TV, reading comics, or at the arcade instead of making money like everyone else. Side note, in the 80s, arcades were dark, smoky dens widely considered a tumor on the youth. It wasn't super acceptable to be there. However, nerds wrap themselves in fantasy. They, or should I say we, I guess, take in, modify, and expel what we love. It's how things start, and it's no wonder that the 80s and 90s manga and anime scenes were flooded with space mech, dark fantasy, samurai showdowns, kung fu, and brash anti-establishmentarianism. This is what the nerds of the time were into, people who read comics, played D&D, listened to punk, and hung out in the arcades. It was also a time of sports anime as well. Let's not be exclusionary. Anyone can be a nerd or an otaku about anything. There is 100% such a thing as sports nerds. Why do you think they made baseball cards? Or fantasy football? The point is that the content that we received in the 80s and 90s was created by and large by nerds. Doing background research into the mangakas of some of the largest titles to grace the scene of classical anime, the ties to other subcultures are blazingly clear. Let me note that many of these artists also made true classic works as well. Again, ones that stand the test of time. Many writers and artists based their characters off of Western comic book characters, gave them personalities of their favorite punk artists, or stole their looks. They took inspiration from kung fu movies and video games and video game characters, and then they turned them into their own works of art. It was a time of experimentation and wildness, so naturally there is a raw, visceral feeling that comes from the art of the time. It was after the establishment of the medium, but before cliche. For me, there's nothing better than going back to that time. To be completely transparent, I am a shy and anxious person. I cover that up by being loud and opinionated, but what really makes me feel okay is popping an old VHS into a CRT, playing my Super Nintendo, or playing an old record. It transports me back in time for the moment and lets me relax. I'm not saying that'll be the case for you, but a little grain, a little bit of poor translation, a 4:3 aspect ratio, mono sound output. Don't let that turn you off. Be enveloped by it. Experience the past, which is what made what you love now possible. It's what helped make who you are possible. Learning about what you love brings an appreciation otherwise impossible to experience. Classical anime can be unpolished, in fact most of it is, but that's character, it's growing pains, and it's fun. I highly recommend Fist of the North Star, Vampire Hunter D, both of them. Ninja Scroll is an absolute must, Akira is a masterpiece, Beast King Go Lion, City Hunter is amazing, even farther back there's Galaxy Express 999, Nausicaa, Berserk, X, Demon City Shinjuku. Look, the list goes on. But those are my personal tastes. Maybe we have similar tastes, you'd know by now if you've been watching since we started, but maybe we don't. Either way, that's unimportant. I feel obligated to give you a place to start, but what I really want is for you to look for yourself. I care about our audience. I want you all to be the best that you can be, regardless of who you are, the color of your skin, what you got between your legs. I want you to find your inspiration and to learn. I want you to create, and I want to see those creations. And if you have a logical mind, take over the world with those math proofs. I encourage you to live and learn and do what feels right. So for every new anime I watch, I try to supplement it with an old one I haven't seen yet. But that's just me, and it could be you too. But to respond to Gigguk specifically here, I'd have to say that anime classics aren't dying. No matter what, there will always be shows or movies that rise to the top and stay there. There may simply just be more of them due to the advent of streaming. But oversaturation doesn't kill the creation of classic art. For instance, look at the music industry. It's a mess. It's almost completely destroyed. Since internet piracy and MySpace became a thing, all music was essentially free, and anyone could make an album. Want to talk about an oversaturated market? The music industry is the one. Yet we still have people like Lady Gaga and Lorde producing classics despite everything. The popular anime people my age bark about are that way because of the limited resources we had when they came into our laps. But it was like that with everything else back then as well, and things change. Before the internet became not only widespread but 100% necessary for modern life, all media was controlled by the upper echelon. Hollywood, big music studios, television execs, we saw what they wanted us to see, and we had very little control over that. However, we're now more free than ever to learn for ourselves. Like I said before, you should question everything. You really should. And right now, you can get a better education online by yourself than you could in most schools at your own pace for free or cheap. So why must we do things like pay for college for a piece of paper that holds no future guarantees? The culmination of the history and knowledge of our species is at your fingertips 24/7. Every anime ever made is on the internet just waiting for you to find it. Hopefully you pay for it, but it's there. It's there to learn about it and to love it, so do it. You won't like every one of them, but you will love some of them more than what's being given to you on a silver platter by streaming sites. Giving up on classical anime is giving up on yourself as a fan. And if anime has taught me anything, it's that you shouldn't give up, am I right? Just ask Brock, look at the guy. So go out there and find some dusty old tome and tell me about it. Expand your horizons and learn about how your world came to be. If you learn about history, you can see the present with 20/20 clarity. And don't forget to always stay skeptical. And when it's your turn, please show the younger generation some classical anime and encourage them to take part in their history as well. Oh, hey, look at it. It's me. I'm back. Now, if you're already a fan of the channel, you're probably aware of this, but we definitely plan on covering classic, classical, and classic anime. So if you're totally into that or you didn't understand it at all, I definitely recommend subscribing and hitting that bell so you're notified every time we put up a new video, even though we do it every single Saturday morning anyway. This was fun for me, getting to talk about older stuff that I really care about, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it enough to make it here till the end. Now, if you want to join the Bonsai Pop team, definitely check out our Patreon, like our ultimate lucky patron of the week, Youngster Joey did. Joey is an excellent example of the best kind of fan. He's always there for us. He's always in the Discord. He's always in the streams. We fucking love you, Joey. Thank you so much for your anime recommendations, hanging out with us in our live viewing parties over on Patreon. We love you, dude, but you know that. But if you want to get to know us like Youngster Joey does, I definitely suggest throwing $1 at our Patreon. It gets you right into that private Discord. And there you go. There you have it. Plus, there's a lot of extra good stuff there too, and if you're interested, check out our tier list. Anyway, my name is Mike. Thank you so much for watching Bonsai Pop, and we will see you next Saturday morning with a brand new video. And until then, hope you have a great week. Also, check out our Twitter and Instagram because they're dope. All right, bye.